Greetings, this is Russ Moody, and I'm bringing you actually a product review. And today I'd like to talk about Age of Sigmar. I downloaded the rules and all the war scrolls, looked at them, decided to put a game together and just play it once or twice to get a feel for it and see what I thought of it. Uh, my initial impression reading through the rules was actually that this did not look like something that I wanted to play. Uh, Reasons are: one, the way you move and move about the table, it's now become a little bit too close to 40k, 140,000. And personally, if it's too close to Warhammer 40,000, I'm just going to play Warhammer 40,000, you know, because I like that game, and future versus fantasy, it doesn't really matter too much to me. What I'm a fan of is just that. Yeah, so let's try and, in the spirit of being positive, I'm going to talk about what I like from Age of Sigmar, and then I'll tell you where I think that the game has gone wrong. So, first off, in the plus category, is they create what they call the hero phase, which is basically the magic phase. But they've taken it and they've moved the hero phase to the start of the game. The hero phase is at the front of the game, first thing you do. And this is actually something I like. And personally, when it comes to 8th edition or any of the previous versions of fantasy, really your magic phase should have been put in that first position. It should have been the first thing resolved uh, in general. So having basically the magic phase come first is actually a good change, and one. But however, there's no reason that you couldn't really, with one or two, a few small tweaks, you could actually move the magic phase to the start of 8th edition and then play 8th edition rules and have all the benefits of this rules change without the drawbacks of Age of Sigmar. So, that much being said, so I do like having the magic phase first because it just makes more sense. It simplifies so many things to do it. And the fact that the spells, none of them are very overpowered, and so that's in its plus. So they did fix that. So one way to look at it would be to look at what you didn't like from, say, 8th edition Warhammer to Age of Sigmar, and we'll look at what needed to be fixed and if they fixed those things. So they are cannons super killy and pinpoint accurate, and no, not anymore. So now there's no longer the threat of the cannon killing off your characters. Um, And then they've also removed all the Uber, auto win spells that you could cast and win automatically on, which is also a good thing. But again, these were fixes that were probably going to be instituted in any version of ninth edition that they put out. Uh, and as far as fixing that within 8th edition, the fixes are relatively simple. And cannons, while deadly, it was actually okay. You could actually get by. It only invalidated the use of a couple of things, in my opinion. So I never really saw how cannons, ruined the game. But I tend to play armies that had cannons, so that might be a bit of a bias there. As far as the Uber Death spells, again, that was an easy fix as far as 8th edition goes. All you had to do was say that, rather than killing off a model, some of those spells, you caused a single wound to some of the models, and then that prevented, a lot of the character sniping, that got around the ward saves and that kind of thing. Or, really, moving forward, it might just be a better idea if players got together, revisited the magic phase, and decided to tone down some of the auto win spells and just play it from there. You know, and really, part of this is coming from the fact that I really loved and enjoyed 8th edition, and what torques me off most of it, what bugs me about what they did with Age of Sigmar is this means that I'm not gonna get my Skaven Codex, my Skaven Army book, and that's a disappointment. I would have liked them to have finished that. I would be much more okay with Age of Sigmar if they had gone in and actually just finished everything up, so that you had a complete 8th edition set with a complete set of 8th edition books and Anyway, that would have been wonderful. Why GW did not do that? Well, it's obvious in my mind why they didn't do that, because if they had actually finished and completed the balancing of 8th edition by putting out the books, then there would actually be no reason to move on to playing Age of Sigmar, and players would just be completely content with 8th. And so yeah, I think in some ways, I think GW does not like to actually fix their games and correct them and make them work, because they are relying upon you needing that new version. So there's that. So what they always try and do is that, and it's wonderful in GW to be innovative, which they have always been a company that innovates. But the problem is that it seems like when they innovate, they always just go to these extremes. They can't why they don't just do more, more of a minor innovations, but they always just go in and they just rewrite everything, and that why they do that, I'm not entirely sure. Other than I think it does drive sales to them. The more radically changed the game, the more radical changes they can make to the game, the more different it works, the more models they think they can sell that way. So purely business concerns, and I really don't like that is the bottom line of the company. I mean, it is a company that's there to make money, so the bottom line has to be to sell miniatures and make money. But I mean, I think there's more than there's other ways to go about it, and the more reliable ways. Uh, this was me too. What I might make another video on and talk about why I think Games Workshop has done what they've done with fantasy. And really, what I see it is they are feeling pressure from Privateer Press and from Mantic Games, and what they don't like is they've lost a bunch of these. They've lost a lot of players to playing Privateer Press, playing a more skirmish style game, and then on the other side, Mantic came out with their rule set and created a regimental style game that was basically just as good as Warhammer 8th Edition. And I think rather than trying to compete head to head with either of those companies, what they're trying to do is find a niche. And it might work for them, and might not, we'll see. So what they did is they took what they think people like about Privateer Press games, being you can move models everywhere, making it more of a skirmish style game, and making it more along the lines of activating, and then your activations then get resolved, and combine that with what they've learned of what they think that people like about Warhammer 40,000 or 40k. And the problem I have, this gets into the negative, what's wrong with Age of Sigmar, and it's simple that I think sometimes, as far as I can tell, Games Workshop does not understand, one, the community that they're dealing with. Two, I think they don't understand what makes their game so popular. I think they totally misunderstood, at least in my mind. I don't think they understand what makes Warhammer 40,000, what makes 40k enjoyable to play. And really, the success of 7th edition, and which I think has probably been very successful for them, along with 6th edition, what made it fun to play, what made those versions of 6 and 7 so much fun to play, versus say 4th and 5th, was what were the scenarios. They moved away from this model where you just take your miniatures on the table and your goal is to wipe out the other player. They, starting with I think if they're starting with really about 6th edition, they really pushed and moved away from the concept of, and earlier than that, I think 5th edition 40k was moved away from this concept of putting your armies on the table and merely just destroying your opponent's army, and that's how you win the game. They moved away from that, and I think as they moved away from that, the popularity of their game went up. And then what they've done with Age of Sigmar, one of the areas where they've gone terribly wrong, is they took out the different missions that you play. One of the best parts about 8th edition Warhammer were those that you had those 6 missions in the back, where you had different ways in which you could actually win the game. I mean, really, the amount of there were about 3, and people hated the Watchtower, but still, there were different ways to win the game. And they've gone in, and what's really wrong with the Age of Sigmar rule set is they've gone back to that. Here's how you win the game: is you wipe out your opponent, and and that's just frustrating because it shows that they don't understand the success of their own game. If they really want to know why people really enjoy playing 40k, it's about those missions, and it's about, especially with the when you're playing down with the Maelstrom of War with the tactical objectives. What makes it enjoyable is that every single turn you're ending a turn and you're scoring points or not scoring points, and you know why they didn't take and learn from 40k in that regard and then apply it to Warhammer Fantasy. That's what I don't understand. Is one of the things that probably, I mean, they've got to have the numbers in front of them, and they've got to know that that's how people are playing 40k. You know, just off the number of people, just off the number of tactical objective decks that they've sold. They've got to know that people are playing 40k that way, with the Maelstrom of War and the tactical objectives, and scoring every single turn and enjoying the game that way, because it's so much more involving, so much more moving when every single turn, where you move the models on the table, it matters. And can I hold that objective? Can I stand up? Can they outlast whatever's coming at them if I move on to this one? It just makes the game so much more fun. And Age of Sigmar, nothing, none of that. Hopefully, there, and maybe we'll see, and maybe that's how they're gonna save Age of Sigmar, is once they've got the beginning set out there, you're going to start to see the next thing they're going to do is introducing, basically missions or different scenarios where you fight in, that's how you win. And maybe that's their plan to do that, and maybe I've got them wrong. But if they're going to do that, why did they not include, at least 1 or 2 or 3, little scenarios into their free download of the rules? Just to give us a hint that, hey, this is where we're going with this game. It's not going to be just about wiping out your opponent. So yeah, so we'll see. Again, if you're an optimist, then maybe that's what they're going to do, and maybe they'll save things. Other things that I did like, the not using points and just throwing what you had on the table is well, it was extremely liberating and fun to just look through the collection and go, oh, I'm going to take 10 of these, 10 of these, 10 of these, put them on the table. That was kind of nice and fun to do, but I don't see how in any way that's going to make for that even much of an enjoyable game. The problem is that to some extent, this happens in 40k. Is a lot of the times when you're going down and you're just doing a pickup game, I can think of 1 or 2 guys where I don't know if I even like to ever play against them in 40k, because I know that they've got so many models and so many of the big, huge, expensive kits that they can just plop down on the table that they've got an answer for everything, and that they're just going to be able to wipe the floor with me. And again, with the Age of Sigmar the way it is, this is the whole, just take your collection and put whatever you want down on the table, makes this even worse. And it's going to be just really a matter of who's got the latest best things and who's got the most models in general that they can choose from. And they're going to be able to put the best list on the table, and they're going to win the game because they've spent the most money, which is what I think that's exactly why they've gotten rid of the points, and they're saying you can put whatever you want on the table, because they're thinking that by doing that they're going to get people to just buy every single model in their range so that they can put whatever they want to down on the table to adjust and win that way. Because yeah, so extremely frustrating. And on top of points that other people have made, where they talk about the lack of balance that such a system, and the fact that really in order to make Age of Sigmar playable, that players are going to have to sit down and come up with some way to balance it out. And it becomes really hard to do, because one of the things that they put keywords in, and maybe there's some kind of pattern in the keywords that you could use to create an easy formula to balance, but they didn't. There's no longer the troop types, and so honestly, when it came to balancing out Warhammer, one of my favorite ways to make it balanced was just to say you've got to take cavalry, you got to take a monster, you got to take one of every type, and that actually made for a really fun balanced game. The only problem was the armies tend to be awfully similar when you did that, but as far as creating balance, it created a very good balance. With Age of Sigmar, I don't think that's possible, because for no other reason that they didn't really list you a type. You don't have a type of anything, so you can't say that the one is one and the other is the other. You don't even really distinguish between cavalry and infantry anymore, and so it's the whole thing has become extremely nebulous and problematic. Other things that I liked about it. We mentioned the magic phase. Mentioned the freedom of choice, which is kind of nice, but it also has a huge drawback. The fact that they've toned down the magic is also nice. Oh, simplified terrain. Oh, thank goodness that they caught on to this. People don't like to sit there and have to roll 2 dice and then roll another dice and roll 5 dice to figure out what a single piece of terrain is, and then have to remember what exactly that terrain does. The sheer amount of ridiculous bookkeeping that was required for 8th edition. But of course, that was a simple fix. People just went, you know what? We're not going to play with all these wacky rules. We're just going to trees are trees, hills are hills, and players just kind of self-policed and fixed that themselves. They just threw all the wackiness out anyway. So yeah. So moving forward, the other big critique that I have of Age of Sigmar, and the reason that it doesn't really work as a game, is that it doesn't matter what unit you are looking at across the table from you. I think what they've done is they've very much taken, and they know, and I think they're trying to appeal to a generation that is really into video games, and so they've made it a lot like a video game in that how they've done their stats, and but the problem is that they've gone through and they've made it very much a non-interactive game. It's not interactive at all. What happens is I take my turn. You can go off into the bathroom. You can go run to the store while I'm taking my turn, because the only reason I'm going to need you around is I need you for the combat phase. That's when I need you. I might need you to make some saves, but honestly, if I wanted to, I could sit there. I could roll out all of my stuff. Like shooting phase, I could roll out all my shooting. Let you know when I'm done, and then when you get back, you're gonna be like, oh, this unit has to make these saves, this one do these saves, this one do these saves, these. Now roll your saves, you're done. Then you can go off, do whatever you want to for 10 minutes or whatever, while I charge everything in, because you don't need to be around for that. As long as I'm an honest individual, as long as I'm honest about what I rolled on the dice, and then you can come back and be like, oh yeah, these guys made a charge, these guys failed. I can tell you who made the charges. I mean, you don't. There's no decision. The player opposite you has to make no decisions when it's my turn. My opponent has to make no decisions when it's my turn, and that just ruins the game. Why are you playing against somebody at that point? I mean, you might as well just play against yourself, because you totally could with this game. You could just put both sides. You could just take out your collection of miniatures, put down 2 sides, and move and attack. Because because you don't need somebody else to make the decisions on the other side. It's so yeah. I mean, as far as a tactical strategic game, Age of Sigmar so far is not it. And here's what I do. I'm gonna give it the benefit, and I'm gonna tell you here are the strategies you've got. Here's what you can run. Okay, 1, the Death Star. So now you can still run the Death Star, and here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take maybe a couple characters behind that have buffs, and they're just going to sit behind a huge wall of elite, of some good fighting, of a massive unit that's really good at fighting. Because how the combat works, you move your 2d6 in, and if you make that charge, then you decide when you're going to go and what you're going to attack with. So really, actually charging in with 3 or 4 units is not necessarily a good thing. The best thing to do is to take that one super kill unit, charge in, and just have it just murder everything. So simply taking a unit of what's really good, maybe white lions, and have that have 100 of them, have 100 white lions and some character support, and just take 100 white lions, charge in, remove a unit. If they charge you, that's okay. They'll do some damage, and then, you know, yeah. I mean, see, and again, as with the other Death Star builds, really, what else you're going to do is you're going to have your, huge, you're going to have, there we go, ogres. So you're going to take, 40 ogres in one unit, and then you're going to have 10 saber tusks all as individual units. Why? Because on your turn, you then pick what your huge unit of ogres is going to kill, while your saber tusk is just getting away. So yeah, so Death Star is still going to be a thing. You're still going to see that. And then okay, build number 2 is going to be this mix. Is you're going to take this wall of infantry or of whatever, and then just take hundreds of them, but in smaller, maybe 10-man units. Take lots of minimalist small units, and sit them, and behind them you're going to sit everything that shoots, and that's how you're going to run your gun line, because you're just going to use these smaller units to hold down, tie things up, and to or cheap big units of slaves or whatever, and they're just going to tie things up while the rest of your army shoots into the combat basically, and shoots them down that way. So you're going to see that. The other one is then to reverse it, is to do kind of a bit of reverse, and take, you can take multiple units, but then what you're going to do is, again, taking those small 5-man minimum, terrible units, and you're just going to use them to just kind of get in the way, and then countercharge. The tactics really, yeah, the tactics and strategies for this it's going to be very limited, and what's really disappointing is that it seems like there's no point to really crushing a flank. That doesn't make much of a sense. Um, it's all just going to become a case of running at each other and getting bogged down in this big huge combat in the middle, and it's just anyway. So positives, yeah. Why? It is simple enough, and here's the thing. I did take it out, and I allowed my 6-year-old to play with me. And, occasionally I've had him kind of play on occasion, just to test things out. And, he gets really bored, and he doesn't understand what's going on, and basically it's just him rolling dice. With Age of Sigmar, and you can say it's a good thing, but he basically kind of understood the game and could play it. And that, I think, is the big flaw, and maybe that's what Games Workshop is going for, is maybe they really want to push their game younger. So maybe they're trying to attract 8-year-olds. Maybe that's what they envision playing Age of Sigmar. That's a very possibility, because the rules are simple enough to be grasped by an intelligent little kid. So if you're the if you're the type of individual who's been playing Warhammer Fantasy for 20 years, it's actually a plus. You can take this game and you can play it with your son, or daughter. You can play it with you can play it with your child, because they'll be able to grasp it. So yeah, there's that. But again, for a lot of players, that's also a downside, because now you're going to be the 30, the 25-year-old, playing with the 10-year-old, and yeah. So there's that, and make of that what you will. But yeah, really, I think that's the problem with Age of Sigmar in a nutshell. They simplified it, and then in simplifying it, they've lost, and it really comes down to Games Workshop not understanding what people liked about their game. Their models are fantastic, and people are always going to like their models. But it makes you sad when they do what they did with this, and it's just, I'm only hoping that what they're trying to do is that eventually it will make sense, and all they're trying to do is gently wean off those older players who have 1,000 models in their garage, and make it so that they'll still kind of stick around long enough to transition in a new generation of players that will buy all the new stuff and all the new armies, which are all going to have rules that will make sense and bring balance and encourage you towards a certain model number. Uh, but yeah, only the future will tell on that, and we'll see. Ideally, as far as myself, uh, yeah, after trying it out, I might try it out one or two more times just to make sure I'm not mistaken. Or honestly, again, like I said, with my 6-year-old, that's probably how I'll play Warhammer with him. Is we'll just play Age of Sigmar because he can totally grasp it. Um, but yeah, and then but yeah, as far as serious, like in the store environments like that, and actually me enjoying the game, I'm gonna stick with 8th. Or I'm actually looking at Kings of War, their second edition, and we'll see. And hopefully that will be the I know because that at least is going to be a regimental style game, which Age of Sigmar is not, and that really saddens me because I really like the whole the regimental and Napoleonic type of setup that Warhammer Fantasy used to be, and the Age of Sigmar is not that. So yeah, I'm either going to be sticking with 8th edition if I ever get a chance to play, and seeing if other people are willing to play either a modified 8th edition, or like I said, I mean honestly, it's better to take some of the good ideas of Age of Sigmar and apply them retroactively onto 8th edition than to switch over to Age of Sigmar, because yeah, it's really here's what I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna say I hate it. I'm not gonna say I'm angry about it. They can do what they want, but I did not find the games enjoyable. There, I was bored, and I have never been bored with Warhammer Fantasy. I've had tons of people be like, "Gosh, how do you play that? That's the most boring game in the world." I've had so many people tell me that, and then that they found Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, 7th edition completely boring. But you know what? I've never been bored with a game, and not ever a single fantasy game until Age of Sigmar. It was just it was just mindless dice rolling. It was just boring. I was bored with it, which made me sad. Anyway, so that's my review, and thanks for spending time to listen. Talk to you later.